series, The Many Faces of Anti-Semitism. And I am very much looking forward to hearing about our today's presenter, Alex Feuerherdt, who will talk about the BDS movement tonight. So that's the movement that on the one hand side wants total boycott of the state of Israel and the Israeli society, and what exactly that means. Alex is going to talk about that in his presentation. Before I'm going to say a few words about our presenter tonight. Want to draw your attention to the fact that from the 28th of July to the 9th of August, the ISGAP Institute has a summer school in Oxford. That's for academics who work on a curriculum around teaching the anti-Semitism problematic at universities. We still have vacant seats. We still have full scholarships as well. All of the information can be found on the ISGAP webpage, and you can get some information there. Back to our our presenter tonight. Alex Feuerherdt is a journalist and author who focuses mostly on Israel-related anti-Semitism. He still works on that topic. I'm going to share my screen for a moment, and here you can see two of his books that Alex Feuerherdt wrote together with Florian Makel and published. Something's not working with my computer. I don't know if you can see the slide. Something is off, but I think it's working now. All right, so on one side we've got the Israel boycott movement published in 2018 by Hendrich and Hendrich. This Today's presentation is about this book mainly. And Alex, I think I got the dates wrong when they were published. Can you correct it? So the book Israel boycott movement is from 2022, and the year about the United Nations against Israel is correct. It's 2018. So the Israel boycott movement book was published in 2020. Actually, the date is not as important. The two current books by Alex that deal with the Israel boycott movement on the one hand side, and on the other hand side with the anti-Israel ideas in the US. They were discussed controversially, and both are books that I would recommend to everyone because they really give great details of the problematic and also the historic development of the processes in a very understandable way. And I think they contribute a lot to this debate because the political debate are often polemic, but you need debates, you need facts for these debates, and they help to give a basis for your argument. Alex Feuerherdt also publishes on the regular blog articles on the webpage Mina Watch on a regular basis, and also on the Jungle World. That's about it. As I said, it is about the Israel boycott movement. Today, Alex is going to talk for 30 minutes. Alex, once again, thank you very much for being with us with a Q&A session after the presentation, and we're looking forward to your presentation. The floor is yours. Thank you, Mark, very much for the lovely introduction and also for the invitation. I am happy that I'm able to give a presentation. It would be even better in person, but online is fine as well. Maybe first of all, I assume that most of you already have some basic knowledge about BDS, so I don't have to start from scratch. So I'm going to concentrate most importantly what the core demands of BDS are and what's problematic about that, what's anti-Semitic about BDS, and I'm not going to analyze concrete activities. But we can do that in the Q&A session if you'd like. I can give more details. But I would like to start with something that's very current. And this also applies, well, of course, it concerns the 7th of October 2023. And on that day, on the same day of the Hamas barbaric massacre in southern Israel with more than 1,200 bestial murders and 250 kidnappings. On that same day, on the 7th of October, the Palestinian BDS National Committee, so the Central um, Palestinian BDS organization, they published a statement. And in this statement, they describe this largest program against Jews since the Shoah, so the genocidal violence against civilists in Israel's heartland. They described it as, I quote literally, as powerful armed uprising of the oppressed Palestinians in Gaza. End of quote. A powerful armed uprising of the oppressed Palestinians in Gaza, and not as a massacre. The brutal anti-Semitic attacks are described as, quote, reactive resistance by the oppressed, end of quote. The problem is not the violence against Israelis, but rather Israeli, as I quote, the Israeli apartheid, the Israeli occupation, and the Israeli settler colonialism. There was no distancing from the terrorist attacks in the settlement, and the BDS hasn't done so either. The group BDS Berlin also shared a tweet on this 7th of October, a tweet from the global BDS campaign, which reads, quote, escalate all BDS campaigns now. Just one day later, on the 8th of October, the German BDS campaign translated and short a longer call to action by the Palestinian BDS National Committee. It repeated the reinterpretation of the terrorist acts as a powerful armed uprising and called for the creation of apartheid-free zones and collective and effective support for the BDS campaign. In the following weeks, BDS groups mobilized for various demonstrations at which anti-Semitic incidents occurred. It is no exaggeration to say that BDS welcomes, indeed glorifies, the massacre of the 7th of October. In my presentation, I would like to show what exactly BDS is. What do we talk about when you talk about BDS? How this movement came about, what its demands and goals are, and why exactly BDS has to be labeled anti-Semitic. BDS wants, and to emphasize this, BDS wants a comprehensive political, economic, academic, and cultural boycott of Israel, a withdrawal of capital, so the withdrawal of investment, that's the D in disinvestment, and sanctions against the Jewish state. BDS is actually not just a movement, it's not or a network. It's also a campaign. Sometimes I talk about BDS a movement, sometimes about BDS campaign. Both is correct. It's an organized campaign via a network. There are no formal structures there, such as a membership, a formal membership, or a organized structure with bodies or committees. Anyone who wants to appear as BDS can do so. They can call their own group BDS or advocate BDS positions, even without using the three letters of BDS. And another important, but perhaps less well-known piece of background information, BDS was not founded by the Palestinian civil society, even if the movement itself often portrays it as such. Rather, BDS goes back to a large NGO forum. So that's a forum of non-governmental organization that took place in Durban, South Africa in August and September 2001, parallel to the United Nations Anti-Racism Conference in the same place in Durban. At both events, the conference and also the NGO forum. At both events, Israel was demonized as the epitome and spawn of racism and colonialism. Um, with the NGO forum going even further in its choice of words and demands, I want to show you two images here from that time. Just going to share my slides. What you can see here is a photo that was taken at a demonstration in Durban in August 2021. If you imagine what it was about a UN conference against racism. And you can see at the NGO forum, people go out to the street. You can see what their slogans are. Zionism is racism. Again, Zionism is racism. Israeli Zionism, ethnic cleansing, and racism. You can see a focus point. It's not just a any shot from that demonstrations actually what it was all about. The demonstration against Israel that took place almost every day back then. Israel as a epitome of racism and colonialism. This was how it was portrayed at the NGO. Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International also supported that. And they handed out protocols of the Elders of Zion or leaflets, quite a lot of leaflets, such as this one. I don't have to explain who that man on the photo is. And this leaflet asks the question, what if I had won? There would be no Israel and no Palestinian bloodshed. So open celebration and glorification of National Socialism in Durban. Participants back then were attacked verbally and physically. Jewish participants reported this. There was anti-Semitic mood at that forum, but also at the NGO forum. And there was a final step in NGO forum that, when you think back about September 2001, there was a time when Palestinian terrorists carried out bloody um, suicide attacks, and the 11th of September also took place at the same time. And at the time, these final statement was published, and in this statement, a lot of things were included that BDS declared in 2005. For instance, the apartheid analogy with South Africa. You also saw it on the demonstration um, slogans and calls for boycott of Israel. And shortly after the declaration, there were the first boycott activities that were especially done by British and American academics. So they were the pioneers. In the US, the first and for the time being failed attempts were made to enforce an academic boycott of the Jewish state in February 2002 at the University of California, soon followed by similar attempts at other American universities. And in the UK, over 120 British academics called for a moratorium on research. So that's a stop on research cooperation with Israel in an open letter in April 2002. A year later, the Association of University Teachers, the AUT, called for all academic contracts with Israeli and contacts with Israeli institutions to be cancelled, and this was also rejected for the time being. In April 2004, the Palestinian campaign for the academic and cultural boycott of Israel was founded in Ramallah. The campaign for the academic and cultural boycott of Israel. And when that was founded, it was primarily done so to give a Palestinian facade to the Israel boycott, so to speak. And the boycott movement had good reasons to present the boycott as a wish of Palestinian civil societies. instead of referring it to its actual history, the one that I just explained to you. Why did I do this restart? Well, was it needed on the one side? It was easier to link up with the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa in a symbolic way, just like it was once the South Africans called for the boycott for a racist regime that mobilized the global community. The Palestinians call that was now being followed with that. And on the other hand, the launch of the boycott movement in the form of the Palestinian call became necessary because this movement would otherwise have been all too closely associated with the anti-Semitic hate festival in Durban, and because it would not have been or not have seemed very authentic without Palestinian leadership. It would have looked more like work of European and American academics. And this is how the BDS founding manifesto was finally published on the 9th of July 2005. The BDS founding manifesto was signed by 172 organizations and associations, by the way, not only Palestinian organizations, but also those from Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Europe, and also overseas. And if you take a look at that list, this list is still on the internet. You can find on the very first place the Council of Palestinian National and Islamic Forces in Palestine. The Council of Palestinian National and Islamic Forces in Palestine, that's an organization that was founded shortly after the start of the Second Intifada with its suicide bombings. It was founded in order to coordinate activities against Israel. All of the major Palestinian parties and organizations belong to it, including the terrorist organization Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and PFLP, as well as the Fatah. And if you think about that, if you hear that BDS is done by the civil society and you include all of these organizations such as Hamas and Islamic Jihad, you can't really think about it as a society. So what are the BDS movement is the BDS movement demanding? Now I have summarized it so it's easier for you. I want to show it. So what are the core demands by the BDS movement? I have written it down in English. It demands that Israel, firstly, end the occupation and colonization of all Arab land and tear down the wall. Secondly, demand that the Israel has to recognize the fundamental right of Arab Palestinian citizens of Israel to full equality. And thirdly, that Israel respects and protects and promotes the rights of Palestinian refugees to return to their homes and property. These are the three core demands of BDS, and I would like to address them now in greater detail. Just in that order. Number one, ending the occupation and colonization of all Arab lands and dismantling the wall. It's not written down here how much Arab land is considered occupied and colonized. Are they only talking about the West Bank, the West Shortland, or are or is it possible that the whole of Israel is considered to be one large illegal settlement? They leave it open, unanswered. But in any case, it is clear that Israel is an apartheid state that must disappear in its entirety. And this is not about the 1967 borders, but about the founding of the Israel state in 1948. This can be seen from countless statements by Palestinian organization that signed the founding call by BDS. So when it is said that Israel must end the occupation or colonization of all Arab land, then many BDS activists are thinking not only about Jenin, Ramallah, and Bethlehem, but also of Tel Aviv, Haifa, and the whole of Jerusalem. So that means they do not want a two-state solution, but rather a no-state Israel solution. The fact that the first part of the first demand is nevertheless unclear is due to the fact that the appeal should not lose its hoped for unifying effect. What does that mean? So if you explicitly only talked about occupied territory, territories of the Gaza Strip, from which Israel had already completely withdrawn in 2005, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Golan Heights that had been explicitly mentioned, then with a few exceptions, all those Palestinian organizations for whom the liberation of Palestine, as they call it, must quite naturally include the disappearance of Israel, and they would have jumped ship. So, conversely, if it had been made clearer that the occupation of all Arab land also meant the heartland of Israel, then a considerable number of those Western activists and supporters whose favor is still being courted today, and they would have been scared away. These activists and these supporters from the West, they should be led to believe that BDS is not about the elimination of the two state, but basically only about peace and human rights. The second part of the first demand, on the other hand, is unmistakably the wall should be torn down. This refers to the barriers between Israel and the West Bank. Only a small part of which is made of concrete, especially in places where Palestinian snipers had previously regularly targeted Israelis. Over 95% of the installations are fences and electronic surveillance measures. Of course, you could criticize the actual layout of the border installations and the hardships and injustices they cause the Palestinian population. However, the truth is also, and above all, that this facility was built in 2002 as a direct response to the wave of suicide attacks during the Second Intifada. At the time, you know that, numerous assassins came to Israel from the West Bank and killed hundreds of Israeli civilians. The number of attacks immediately fell significantly since the construction of the barrier. Israel, therefore, has a legitimate security interest, and the construction of the barrier is an expression of this interest. But this is not mentioned in the BDS appeal, and this is no coincidence. The fact that the call for a boycott calls for this context I talked about and ignores it, admits this context is paradigmatic and symptomatic for BDS. Israeli actions are not presented as reactions to Palestinian or Arab actions, and thus as a part of a reciprocal dynamic, but they're presented as a unilateral, unprovoked, and systematic violence by Israeli perpetrators against Palestinian victims. In this view, Israelis are the perpetrators and Palestinians are the victims. This is the simple logic that BDS represents. And the logic associated with it results from the attitude that Israel has no right to exist in principle and therefore can only ever be in the wrong, no matter what it does or does not do. Then the second demand, recognizing the fundamental rights of the Arab Palestinian citizens of Israel to full equality. Here, unlike the first demand, it is not about the population in the West Bank, but about the Arab citizen in the Israeli heartland. Now, no serious person would deny that in Israel, as in any other democratic country, by the way, there is democratization in society and democratization also in state institutions. But it's not the case that the Israeli state fundamentally refuses to recognize the basic rights or legal equality of its Arab Palestinian citizens. On the contrary, this equality is repeatedly emphasized, as was already the case in the Declaration of Independence in 1984. If we look at the formal legal restrictions, that Arab Palestinian citizens of Israel have compared to Jewish and but also Druze and Circassian citizens. When you take a look at that, we see that the Arab minority is exempt from compulsory military service and the privileges associated with it, which doesn't mean that they're not allowed to serve in the Israel military, and they do so even more actually. The nationality law also means that their language is no longer an official language, which is, however, means inclusion primarily on the symbolic level, but has little impact on everyday life. In other words, the basic right to equality for Arab citizens of Israel demanded by the US has long been formally recognized. In addition, the discrimination suffered by Arab Israelis um, is relatively low compared to the situation of national minorities in other countries. And even more so compared to the situation of Black South Africans during apartheid. And this is the benchmark for the BDS. And there's also no Arab country in which Arab citizens have such an extensive individual rights of defense and democratic co-determination as in Israel. Therefore, the discrimination in Israel cannot be just not be a justification for a boycott campaign that is currently unique in its scope. The second core demand of the BDS movement amounts to equating Israel with apartheid South Africa, because not a specific policy of the Israel government is what's worthy of criticism for BDS. Rather, in their worldview, the Jewish state itself is based on a system of racist oppression, just as South Africa was back then. And this is the reason why the appeal states that the um, punitive measures demanded against Israel must be maintained until the fundamental right of the Arab Palestinian citizens of Israel to complete equality is recognized. Although this fundamental right has long existed, but Israel should simply not be allowed to be a Jewish state. And the third core demand, the rights of Palestinian refugees to return to their home and property must be respected, promoted, and protected by Israel. First of all, it must be said that it was the Arab states that attacked Israel the day after it was founded, um, one day after it was founded, with the aim of wiping the Jewish state off the map. If they had accepted the United Nations petition resolution of November 1947, the refugee problem would certainly not have existed to this extent. And as an estimated 25 to 30,000 of the refugees at the time are still alive today. The fact that around 5.6 billion people are registered with the United Nations Refugee Agency for the Palestinian today. 700,000 people were registered at the beginning. That's all due to a special feature. In the case of the Palestinians, the refugee status is passed down through the generations to this day. Why? Because the UN considers their return to the territory that now belongs to Israel to be the only solution, as considered by the UN. And as long as this return is pending, they argue, every Palestinian is automatically categorized as a refugee, even if they were born and live in the Palestinian territories. I believe it's obvious that no Israeli government, from left to right, or in the middle, no Israeli government can accept this supposed right of return. And conversely, it is obvious why over 5.5 million Palestinians should return to a country in which the vast majority have never lived. A return of these people would make the Jewish people in Israel a minority who then have to deal with the majority, a situation that Jewish people worldwide know very well. That would be the end of Israel as a Jewish state. And that means that from the three basic claims you can see here, the second or third talk about the Israeli heartland and not about the controversial territories. And with the first demand, it is implicitly the case if Israel were to would give in to these demands, that would be no Jewish state. And that's precisely the aim of BDS, and leading BDS representatives say so bluntly. Earlier recently, Omar Barghouti, one of the leading Palestinian representative of the BDS movement, probably the leading representative, Omar Barghouti once again made it unmistakably clear BDS is explicitly directed only against Jewish Israelis and Jewish Israeli institutions. That means BDS is aimed at Jews. In May 2019, the German Bundestag passed a resolution against BDS and stating there, quote, the argumentation patterns and methods of the BDS movements are anti-Semitic. The all-encompassing call for a, quote again, in its radicalism leads to the branding of Israeli citizens of the Jewish faith as a whole. The movement calls for a boycott of Israeli artists and stickers on Israeli goods to discourage people from buying them, but also, as it's stated in the resolution, are reminiscent of the most terrible phase of German history. Don't buy stickers from the BDS movement. Stickers on Israel products inevitably evoked associations with the Nazi slogan, Don't buy from Jews, and corresponding graffiti on facades and shop windows. This is what's stated in the Bundestag resolution from 2019. There are serious and widely accepted definitions of anti-Semitism. Above all, you probably all know the working definition of anti-Semitism of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, so the IRA, and also the famous 3D test of the former Soviet dissident and later head of the Jewish agency, Nathan Sharansky. According to this 3D test, you probably know it, Israel-related anti-Semitism is known to exist when there is a delegitimization of Jewish sovereignty, a demonization of Israel, or an application of double standards. So that means when standards are applied to Israel, like to no other country in the world. According to these definitions, BDS is clearly anti-Semitic. Because it demonizes Israel, applies these double standards. And this is important to me, but that regardless of such definitions, one must ask what the BDS attacks against Israel mean for Judaism today, not just for Israel, but for Judaism itself. Take a little detour here. The Shoah and the flight and expulsion of Jews from Arab countries meant that the centers of Jewish life shifted from Europe and the Arab world to two other places, the US and also the newly founded Israel. Also, in the US, Jewish people were only a minority amongst many other groups that could make this up the American society. The proportion of Jews in the total American population has also fallen from 3 to 2% over the past 50 years, and the numbers are predicted to continue to decline sharply in the coming decades. And the Jewish people in the US has also changed. The number of people for whom Judaism doesn't play a bigger part anymore. This number is increasing. So that means that the the significance of Israel for Judaism itself becomes even more. You have a heartland where Jewish people can live in a Jewish state. Um, so that it has become the heart of the Jewish um, Judaism as a cultural and psychological center, and soon to have it's going to be its democratic center as well. At the moment, the number of people of Jewish people living in the US and Israel is roughly the same. Over the years, a Jewish community has formed that's different than the one in Israel. And for the majority of the Jews outside of Israel, there's no doubt that Israel is a important, maybe even the most important symbol of contemporary Judaism, the most important symbol of Judaism. And this also applies to those Jewish people who don't think of themselves as religious, but as Jews anyway. For them, the existence of Israel is a part of their understanding as Jews. That doesn't mean that they automatically support the um, Israeli politics, but it also means that they feel associated with the state of Israel because acknowledging Israel is a embodiment of the right for Jewish people to self-determine in a Jewish state, to be sovereign in a Jewish state, and this is part of their um, and because around a four-fifths of all Jews in America and Europe feel close or very close to Israel. Um, Many of them see it as an attack on Judaism when Israel boycotters constantly drag the world's only Jewish state into the mud in their propaganda. When the BDS movement claims that is no it's not directed against Jews, it's just against Zionism and Israel, then it is ignoring the vast majority of Jews living today, in whose eyes Israel, uh, once again, regardless of government policy, um, in whose eyes Israel is very important. And because the Israel boycotters regard Zionism as fundamentally criminal, their hatred is inevitably also directed against the overwhelming majority of Jews outside Israel, unless they are prepared to abandon their understanding of Judaism. There's a term for such an attack on an important symbol of Judaism, or the most important symbol of Judaism, and an essential component of Jewish identity. There's a term for that, and it is called anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism, in this sense, however, is not just a propaganda of the BDS movement, but also the goal that arises from the central demands of the Israel boycotters, and which I've already mentioned, the elimination of Israel as a Jewish state, because that would mean, and the historian Jakob Talmud wrote it in 1976, that this would, quote, plunge a knife directly into the heart of Judaism. And not only because it would probably mean the extermination of millions of Jews once again, but also because it would destroy the last remnant of the integral historical Jewish civilization. This blow, according to Talmud, would prove to so severe for Judaism worldwide, for its sense of self, that it would not survive it. And in this sense, to quote Charles Krauthammer, um, quote, the existence and the survival of the Jewish people depend on the existence of the Jewish state, and all the more so, the greater the relative importance of Israel for Judaism has become, and it will become even more so in the coming decades. The end of Israel means the end of the Jewish people, says Krauthammer. The only hope for the continued existence and survival of Judaism hangs on the existence of Israel. As I said, After the extensive murder of European Jews and the almost complete flight and expulsion of the Oriental Jews, there are now two centers of Judaism, the US and Israel. The elimination of the Jewish state, so that means the destruction of one of these two centers, and the Israel Judaism that emerged there would indeed be an unacceptable blow for Judaism. Um, Next to the small Jewish communities in Europe, there would only be the US with its declining Jewish communities. This kind of an Armageddon scenario, but I don't think it's an exaggeration. So if that is the case, that the implementation of the Israel boycotters demands, what would that mean for the Israel state? Then the BDS activists want Judaism to be hit by such a massive blow that the existence of Judaism is in danger. And therefore, we can only say, regardless of the demonizing daily propaganda and its activity, BDS is a fundamentally anti-Semitic movement, a fundamentally anti-Semitic network, a fundamentally anti-Semitic campaign. But to get to the end, how big is the influence of BDS? Measured on the against the fact that a comprehensive economic boycott of Israel was and is an essential part of the campaign. Measured against that, the BDS movement has little to show in this respect. Not a single state has joined the call for an economic boycott, and no state who already didn't already do it, and also the impact on Israel's economy has been very limited. So the disinvestment from companies, they are very small. The economic boycott of Israel is not even remotely as successful as the boycott against South Africa during the apartheid era. And this is not at least due to the fact that Israel is fully integrated into the global market and its products and goods cannot be replaced as easily as it was the case with South Africa. There's so no big economic damage, but that shouldn't be a reason to sound the all clear. Otherwise, we wouldn't hear the presentation. BDS is a part of a political campaign worldwide, a campaign to defame, delegitimize, criminalize, and ultimately destroy the Jewish state. That a campaign that extends far beyond the ranks of BDS fanatics and activists. The demands, goals, methods, and vocabulary of the BDS movement have long been shared by influential players, especially at the United Nations, by the way, where Israel is treated as a pariah state and is condemned in resolution years after years, more often than all other countries in the world combined. Um, the impact of BDS in the academic and cultural sphere should also not be underestimated, particularly in the UK and the USA. In many places there, BDS creates an atmosphere of intimidation and fear, especially amongst Jewish and pro-Israeli students. This particularly is true in the UK, where the academic union is also on the side of BTS. This applies here in particular. And in the cultural sector, for example, every reasonably well-known musician and popular band that decides to perform in Israel must at least expect to come under massive pressure, harassment, uh, threats, and shitstorm. The success, so to say, of the BDS movement is therefore not only measured by whether it affects expert figures and the diplomatic relations of a country or community of states with Israel, but also by the extent to which it influences the political and social climate um, of Jews in Israel. In Germany, BDS in an organized form, as well as a BDS group, for instance, it has a less influence than in Anglo-Saxon countries, especially since the Bundestag resolution in 2019. BDS groups bearing this name tend to have few members. Nevertheless, they are very active and disrupt events or try to prevent artists from performing, but I don't need many people to do that. However, the informal influence of BDS in the cultural sector is much more serious. For instance, a association of large cultural institutions, the so-called Initiative GG, so Basic Law 3.3, open-mindedness to world, vehemently criticizes the Bundestag resolution. Initiative considers the resolution to be attack on freedom of science and art and agitates against it, particularly in the media. And to give another example about the influence of BDS on the major art exhibition Documenta in Kassel in 2022, that was also very serious. Here, BDS supporters and BDS activists were represented in the relevant decision-making structures, and they were largely responsible for ensuring that anti-Semitic exhibits were shown at the Documenta. Some of you, maybe the majority of you, have already seen those exhibits. I want to show you two examples. If I can show you the screen, yes, it works. So if you see them here on the big picture called People's Justice by the Artistic Party, we were able to see these excerpts. Someone who was clearly represented as a Jewish people with fangs and the SS symbols on his head. He's wearing a kippah below it, so he's hiding his identity. On the right-hand side, we can also see a Jewish people who is depicted as a pig, the only one in the picture. It says Mossad on his helmet. So these are just two examples. There are a lot more. Actually, they were all shown at the documentary. So there was a lot of discussion. And the activists were all sitting and in these decision-making structures. They were responsible of showing these exhibits and called it authentic art from the global south. The post-colonial scene in particular is gaining weight in the art and academic world, and it sympathizes strongly with BDS. And this is my last sentence. Anyone who's serious about the fight against anti-Semitism must be active against BDS and must be active in this cultural field or become active. So that was just the short presentation about BDS. There's a lot more about it, especially about how it was founded. There are more examples about the activities. You can find them in the books that Mark talked about. One is called Hate in a New Garb. I'm now looking forward to your contributions and questions, whatever you'd like to talk about. First of all, thank you for listening and your patience, and give the floor back to Mark. Thank you very much. So, Alex, thank you very much for this great presentation. We actually have several questions and people who raised their hand. Before I uh, let Liz Taylor talk, we have a few questions in the chat. Maybe you can go through that. Because it talks about the things you already talked about. You said that the academic movement in Great Britain that is officially supports the BDS movement. We have a question by Michael Connor that in the chat, and he asks, what about other human rights organizations? How do they behave? Michael Connor asked about the organization Human Rights Watch, but the question, of course, is a general question. To which extent, when you take a look at that map of uh, these human rights organization, what is their position when it comes to the BDS movement? These organizations, Human Rights Watch is one example. Amnesty International could also be named here. They do not formally support the BDS movement. You won't find text, no calls, no explicit calls to support BDS, but, and this goes to show a general problem and underlying problem. I try to hint at it a little bit. The demand, the goals, and also the vocabulary by BDS also influences the statements of some large organizations, in particular the apartheid accusation, the accusation of colonial colonialism. So all of this vocabulary that you find with BDS, you also find in these organizations. So in the end, the mindset and the attitude that BDS transports can also be found in these kind of organizations. I think it's quite important to mention, to put in a polemic way, anti-Semites of any kind of area always try to kind of legitimize their anti-Semitism and try to put it in a way as if they were protecting human rights, and they try to portray themselves as protectors of humanity. Currently, Israel is accused of infringing human rights, and they use that to show that it is just the boycott and the sanctions are just punitive measures, but they but they use the worst vocabulary possible to do so. They talk about human rights infringement. That's war crimes, crimes against humanity. That's stuff you keep reading over and over again. So that there are no words about. No accusations are too big to be used against Israel. And you can find this kind of vocabulary with those human rights organizations as well. What you have to say, if you read through Human Rights Watch articles or Amnesty International, they have a good reputation, of course. And I'm not standing here and claim Amnesty International only does bad work. That's not the case. But Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, who, by the way, also gathered donations in Saudi Arabia for their fight against Israel. These organizations also have a political agenda. In particular, in the British branch of Amnesty International, the attitude and the tendency to fight Israel is quite strong. So the political agenda has very little to do with human rights work, actually. This agenda keeps leading to Israel being demonized and delegitimized by this kind of organization. And there's always some kind of link to BDS. There's no, even if there's no official agreement, central demands and also the wording of BDS can be found in these kind of statements. Thank you, Alex. Barbara Winsrath, who finances BDS, who are the biggest donators and supporters, and she also asked the same thing about the Durban conference. Who financed it? So ultimately, BDS is a non-organized association, so they cannot get membership payments. But ultimately, if you know that there are organizations who support BDS and that are actually governmental organizations, then you could think that financing terror organizations, that's usually done by Iran, they actually end up with BDS. A very rich, these initiatives who support BDS don't have a lot of money to finance their activities, but the problem rather is that where BDS activities take place, or where the mindset feeds into the United Nations. So let's say if the United Nations have a blacklist, they do have that blacklist of companies that cooperate with Israel. And if they publish that list of companies that you shouldn't cooperate with because they work with Israel, and you want to bring financial damage to them, or if Germany, if this initiative called 3.3 openness to the world, these kind of initiatives that are supported by the government, or if you take a look at the European Union, on the one hand side, they formally distance themselves from BDS, but on the other hand side, they keep financing organizations and support organizations where they claim that they only fight for peace and human rights. But these are organizations that are close to the BDS. So you can see that there's money indirectly flowing to the BDS. Just to give you one example, in Germany, we have several initiatives from the church and from political parties. These church initiatives, NGOs, and party initiatives such as the Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung, the Heinrich Böll Initiative by the Green Party, or the Ebert Stiftung, or the Adenauer Stiftung. They have connections to organizations in the Palestinian areas and territories, and this is all claimed to be an exchange with the Palestinian civil society. These organizations on the Palestinian side, whether it be church initiatives such as Misere or Brot für die Welt, if they work together and cooperate with them, they are all close to BDS or part of the BDS movement. So there is the BDS movement is supported via this cooperation. If they get funding, this funding indirectly flows to this organization and their activities and acts. And this probably is also something that it's an issue with the EU. They do officially reject the BDS, but they also support initiatives that are close to BDS. And where I say they're not actually fighting for peace and human rights, this is an indirect link that is very difficult to touch. But it's kind of the basis for the BDS movements. Thank you very much. Okay, we have a James Taylor raised his hand. He wants to say something, but I can't see him on the screen at the moment. I think maybe Daphne has to promote him to, to panelist. And while you do that, we have a question by Emmanuel Rund. I think we start with Emmanuel Rund's question, and in the meantime, Daphne can promote James Taylor to panelists, and then we can listen to James' question. Emmanuel, please. Thank you, Shalom and Moin Moin from Jerusalem. I'd like to thank ISGAP and Daphne and Charles for the great work, and also Professor Feuerherdt. I also wrote a question that why Germany has always declared that security of Israel um, so is the security of Germany, but well, it's quite the opposite. And why aren't there enough people in Germany um, who demonstrate against it? Why are they so weak? Why are they so small? And when it comes to cooperation with Jewish community, um, what what Germans do when it comes to what Arabs say against Israel? So called Palestinians, so Arabs, um, what and why don't you do anything? As I personally went to Germany, um I shot 30 films about the topic of Germans, Jewish people, and Israel. And I myself was boycotted by TV uh, broadcasting units. So the editors, they were anti-Israel. They didn't show my films and they didn't pay me. And well, so there are a lot of problems in the government of Denmark. So to put it that way. Thanks once again for the great evening. Thank you very much for the question. That is actually a statement. I can only agree with you. You are absolutely right. What Ms. Merkel um, uh, considered German state reason back in 2008 that Israel's security is also German security. That's also only written down on paper. This stuff that you hear in Sunday speeches that you only talk about, but they don't act upon it. Um, Israel does get military support from Germany on the one hand side, but on the other hand side, you also have to say that what was being mentioned verbally is not really translated into acts and actions. I try to keep it short. The worst aspects actually are that we could expect that if Israel's security is part of Germany's thinking, Germany should have a different position towards Iran, who is the main threat to Israel. And to give you a second example, Germany keeps voting against Israel in the United Nations. That's been the case for years. They questions why they do that, why Germany's do that. Just like most other European countries, don't want to rel put it into relation, actually. I just want to mention that Germany keeps voting against Israel, whether it's in the Human Rights Council or any kind of agreement. The reason always is, well, we keep negotiating with Palestinians and Arab countries about having drafts for this resolution that are not entirely against Israel, and then we vote yes after the negotiations. But you have to say that these kind of resolutions, even in the less terribly worded way, they're still unacceptable. For years, Germany has been voting against Israel together with other countries. In 2019, the German Bundestag, there was a request to change the voting behavior, but this request was rejected by a vast majority. And so nothing has changed significantly about this voting patterns. The BDS resolution by the Bundestag, however, is something that's positive that you could emphasize, but in practice, this doesn't have a lot of influence. If you talk to people from the art and cultural sector, they say, well, that's terrible. We can't really keep inviting people anymore because of that. But on the other hand side, why is something like the Documenta like why was that even possible to have so many anti-Semitic exhibits in Germany? All of this anti-Semitism that gets even worse has been getting worse since the 7th of October, as we can see in demonstrations in Germany. Why is this not met in a with proper measures? That's basically the question you ask. Why aren't there more actions? And I am afraid that the fact that on the one hand side there is a verbal acknowledgement of the existence of Israel and the security of Israel. On the other hand side, not much is being done to actually put this into concrete measures. This has to do with the fact that in Germany a lot of people were looking for an opportunity and found it to uh, express their still existing and virulent anti-Semitism in a political acceptable manner. To keep it short, that what we know about classical anti-Semitism, it's basically it was slightly mo um, amended, slightly changed, and like Leon Polyakov once said that it's like Israel is like the two on amongst other states. It's they can put their anti-Semitism into a political acceptable manner. This is all covered by saying, well, that we're only fighting for human rights and peace, but there's a passion against Israel. It exists not only in Germany, but it does exist here. And it goes to show that this old anti-Semitism has been conserved, that it has transformed and moved to a different level. But this passion is still the same, and is translated also into the media, into politics. No, none of them would say I'm an anti-Semite. No one in Germany, basically no one says that. But in practice, this is exactly this alleged political appropriate way of expressing anti-Semitism. I think the criticism of Israel, the anti-Zionism, is actually quite popular and scary. Thank you very much. Now the question by James Taylor.
Ich denke, es ist im Wesentlichen eine Frage, nach welche Strategien man in der
Basically, a
Antisemitismus
question what kind of
einsetzen kann.
strategies you could use in fighting anti-Semitism. Ich
Okay. Gut.
All right.
Okay. Dann herzlichen
Okay,
Dank.
so thank you very
Also kommt da
much.
noch was oder?
Uh, Something you'd like to add? Yes, just one more thing.
Okay.
I can see, I'm going to speak German again. I'm going, it's we're quite stuck. We can't really advance. I personally, if I can make a statement here, but if the biggest massacre against Jewish people since the end of the Shoah, it doesn't, if that doesn't lead to people being shocked worldwide and solidarizing themselves, but if that leads to the opposite with an increase to of anti-Semitism, so if crimes actually leads to as people teaming up with the perpetrators. So it's terrible. This unspeakable things are happening, and this leads to an increase in anti-Semitism worldwide. And I personally um, cannot find a solution how to change that, because of course it's rubbish to think that if something terrible happens that the humanity becomes more empathetic, more solidaric and cleverer. This has never worked, so you shouldn't be surprised or become cynic. But I think it's very difficult, and emotionally actually it's insufferable. It's not difficult to deal with, but it's insufferable. The world has become less safe, it has become more vulnerable, especially for Israeli people. And I think the attack that took place there, um, if it wasn't um arbitrary, it would have been, of course, it would have been worse, but um just to emphasize that it wasn't just against Israelis, against old people. It was also got people who for all their life tried to live together with Palestinians, who gave jobs to Palestinians at the kibbutz, just to be punished for that, to because they people in the kibbutz, they spied and t told the Hamas about it. If that wasn't possible, if is there hope for the future? Um, when I hear that, it goes to show that anti-Semitism is against Jewish people, and behaving properly and try to or talking to the um enemies of the um to their enemies. I think that actually leaves me speechless. I think we are trying to fight off all these things, and we just need to fight off the worst case scenarios, and that we got work cut out for ourselves. I can't really think about how to solve the conflict. But I'm really happy to get any kind of idea from you, any kind of intellectual impulse. I'd be very thankful for that. I think nobody realistically expected that we come up with a strategy to fight anti-Semitism, but actually, you can say in this context, I actually want to draw attention to Summer Institute as well, where we're dealing with the question how to find strategies to fight anti-Semitism. Um, in the academic sector. I took a look at the dates again, the 28th of July to the 9th of August. This is all about like dealing with the question, and we still have vacant seats. Alex Feuerherdt, thank you very much for this great presentation. I don't know where our participants come from, but Alex is also on the 18th of April. He's at the Jewish community in Düsseldorf. You can hear him talk and see him at 7 o'clock in the Leo Beck saal. If you're interested in that, you can go on the website of the Jewish community. Alex, once again, thank you very much for taking your time out of the day to give us this great presentation. Thank you once again to Michaela Bertsch, who once again translated once again. And I would also like to draw attention to our presentation next week on the 26th of March. The political scientist and author Martin Kluge is going to give a talk about anti-Semitism in the anti-imperialistic movements. I think that's also a topic that, especially with regards to the recent topics, is a current one, so that we have the opportunity to understand where these positions that are expressed in connection to the 7th of October, where they actually come from, what the developments were. So that's the next presentation of the 26th of March, Dr. Martin Kloke. I'd be happy if you back with us once again. And maybe I can also draw attention to the fact that Florian Markel on will be here on the 9th of April. I just want to talk about him quickly because he worked a lot with Alex Feuerherdt. The two books that we saw beforehand were co-authored by Alex Feuerherdt and Florian Markel. And he will be with us on the 9th of April 2024. And before that, the week before that, we also have a presentation by Rebecca Schönebach. There are a lot of presentations, great presentations. You can see it on the ISGAP webpage. I am very happy that you were all with us today. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the good questions and discussion. And goodbye. Thank you. And I'd like to invite you to Jerusalem. That would be lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you for that. And also, I would also like to thank the translator. I know I'm not someone who speaks very slowly. I'm sure that made it a lot more difficult, especially in the discussion. Thank you very much for making it possible. Thanks again for the invitation and the questions. I was very happy to hear that. I hope we can meet in person as well, and I hope you all have a lovely day or evening, depending on where you are.